My name is Taylor, 32 years old, and until last night, I was the invisible banker funding my family's lifestyle. It was 5 degrees in Denver when I sat on the floor of my condo, watching a live stream on my phone. My parents were hosting their 40th vow renewal gala at a country club in Cherry Creek. I know the venue well because I paid the $15,000 deposit for it 6 months ago. On the small screen, the ballroom was glowing with golden light. My father, Thomas, stood at the microphone, raising a glass of champagne. He looked polished, distinguished, and completely unbothered. And finally, he said, his voice booming through my phone speakers, a toast to our daughter, Sabrina. Without her vision and dedication, this magical night wouldn't be possible. She is the heart of this family. The camera panned to Sabrina, my younger sister. She was beaming in a designer gown, blowing kisses to the crowd, soaking up the applause. I sat there in the dark, my breath fogging in the cold air because my heating unit was broken and I hadn't had time to call maintenance. I stared at the screen, waiting for my name, waiting for even a footnote. But the applause faded, the band started playing, and my name never came. The injustice didn't make me cry. It burned, cold and sharp, like the snow falling outside my window. Have you ever done all the heavy lifting while someone else took all the credit? Drop a yes in the comments if you've ever been the invisible backbone of your family. I want to hear your story. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't call my mother to scream. I didn't do anything that would give them the satisfaction of calling me dramatic. Instead, I opened my laptop. I am a senior financial analyst. I deal in facts, figures, and hard consequences. Emotions are just variables that cloud the data. I logged into my banking app and pulled up the contract for the venue. The balance due is $35,000, scheduled for an automatic transfer at 8 a.m. the next morning. That money was meant to cover the catering, the open bar, and the live band currently playing my parents' favorite song. My finger hovered over the trackpad. For years, I had convinced myself that paying was a form of love, that if I just wrote enough checks, eventually, I would buy my way into their appreciation. But looking at Sabrina's smiling face on that screen, I realized something. I wasn't buying love. I was paying a tax for existing. I clicked Cancel Transfer. The confirmation window popped up. Are you sure? I didn't hesitate. Yes. Then I logged into the Family Emergency Fund account, a joint account I had funded entirely on my own for 5 years to ensure my parents had a safety net. The balance was healthy. I initiated a full transfer of every cent back into my personal savings account. It was 12:03 in the morning. The party was still going. They were dancing, drinking, and celebrating their perfect life. But the check was about to bounce. And when the sun came up, the bill would come due. I closed my laptop and finally felt warm. The next day, I didn't go into the office. I sat at my kitchen island with a cup of black coffee and waited. I didn't have to wait long. My phone started buzzing at 9:15. It was my mother, Patricia. I let it go to voicemail. Then my father. Then Sabrina. By 10 o'clock, the texts were rolling in. They weren't asking if I was okay. They weren't worried. They were furious. My mother's text read, the caterer's card was declined. They are threatening to hold the deposit. Fix this immediately. Sabrina sent a string of angry emojis followed by, you are ruining my content schedule with your drama. This is so selfish of you. My father posted a status update on social media, vague but pointed. Some children forget their roots once they get a little money. Sad to see loyalty is dead. I read each message with clinical detachment. There was no why. There was no are you hurt. There was only the outrage of a parasite when the host body finally fights back. It confirmed everything I needed to know. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a wallet. And a wallet doesn't have feelings. A wallet just opens and closes. I blocked their numbers one by one. Temporary blocks, just to buy myself some silence. I needed focus. Because what I was about to do next wasn't just a tantrum. It was a forensic audit. To understand why I did this, you have to understand the architecture of my conditioning. I didn't just wake up one day and decide to fund a $40,000 party. I was trained for this. For 3 years, I had been paying my parents' mortgage $4,500 a month. They told me it was to save the family estate, the house I grew up in. They said they were struggling, that retirement hadn't been kind to them. I believed them because I wanted to. I wanted to be the good daughter. I wanted to be the one who saved them. It's a concept called intermittent reinforcement. It's the same psychological trick casinos use to keep you playing slot machines. If you lose every time, you quit. But if you win just once in a while, a small payout, a flashing light, you keep feeding coins into the machine, chasing that high. My parents were masters at this. Most of the time, they were cold, critical, or indifferent. But every time I wrote a check, the light would flash. My mother would say, "Oh, Taylor, you're so responsible. What would we do without you?" My father would clap me on the shoulder and say, "That's my girl." Those crumbs were my jackpot. I was addicted to the tiny moments of validation that only cost me my entire savings account. I convinced myself that the next check would be the one that made it permanent. That if I just paid off the house, they would finally love me as much as they loved Sabrina. But Sabrina didn't have to pay. Sabrina just had to exist. She was the prize. I was the paymaster. And last night, watching that toast, the machine finally broke. I stopped chasing the win. I realized the game was rigged, and I was done playing. I treated the next few hours like a work project. I opened a spreadsheet and titled it the audit. I started pulling every bank statement, every transfer receipt, every email from the last 5 years. I wanted to see exactly where my money had gone. I knew I had sent them roughly $4,500 a month for the mortgage, plus extra for emergencies, car repairs, medical bills, house maintenance. The total was staggering. Over $200,000 in 3 years. But as I dug deeper, the numbers didn't add up. I saw withdrawals from their account that matched the dates of my transfers. But they weren't going to the mortgage lender. They were going to travel agencies, luxury boutiques, Sabrina Incorporated, my sister's unregistered brand. I cross-referenced the dates. The month I paid for my father's emergency dental surgery, Sabrina posted photos from a spa weekend in Tulum. The month I covered the leaking roof, my mother was tagged in a new designer wardrobe haul. They hadn't been struggling. They had been skimming. I was funding their lifestyle, and they were laundering it through guilt trips. The mortgage was just the cover story. The betrayal sat heavy in my gut, cold and leaden. This wasn't just ingratitude. This was embezzlement. I printed the spreadsheet. I organized the receipts. I drafted a formal document. Notice of severance. It wasn't a letter. It was a cease and desist. I was preparing to cut them off, fully and permanently. But I had one more thing to check. I decided to pull my own credit report just to be thorough. I wanted to make sure our financial entanglements were completely visible before I severed them. I logged into the credit bureau's website. I scrolled past my student loans, my car lease, my own mortgage. And then I stopped. My heart hammered against my ribs. There, sitting at the top of the active accounts list, was a loan I didn't recognize. A business loan. For $250,000. Opened 6 months ago. The borrower listed was Sabrina Incorporated. The guarantor was me. I stared at the screen, the blood draining from my face. I had never signed for this. I had never agreed to this. I clicked for details. The loan had been taken out online, using digital signatures. I pulled the original application documents. There was my signature, clear as day. Taylor Vance. But I looked at the date stamp on the electronic signature. October 12th. I pulled on my calendar. On October 12th, I was in London for a global finance conference. I was in a meeting with stakeholders from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. I had the flight records, the hotel receipts, the timestamps on my work emails. I physically could not have signed that document from a computer in Denver. This wasn't just my parents skimming off the top. This was my sister stealing my identity to fund her failing influencer career. And my parents had to know. They were the only ones with access to my personal data, my social security number, my old tax returns stored in the safe at their house. They had handed my identity to Sabrina like a party favor. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was a felony. A $250,000 felony that could cost me my CPA license, my job, and my freedom if I defaulted. The cold anger from the night before evaporated, replaced by a terrifying, icy resolve. I wasn't dealing with a toxic family. I was dealing with a criminal ring. I needed to know how they did it. A loan of that size requires more than just a digital click. It requires verification. It requires a witness. I scrolled to the bottom of the loan agreement, looking for the notary seal. Electronic notarization is common now, but it still requires a registered official to verify the signer's identity via video or in person. I found the seal. Marcus Thorne, Notary Public. I froze. Marcus. Sabrina's fiancé. The man who had been smiling next to her in the live stream last night. He was a notary, and he had used his official stamp, his state-granted authority, to witness a signature that never happened. He had falsified a federal document to help my sister steal $250,000 in my name. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just Sabrina. It was all of them. My parents provided the data. Sabrina applied for the loan. Marcus stamped it. They had formed a conspiracy against me. They had sat around a dinner table, discussed this, and decided that my financial ruin was a price they were willing to pay for Sabrina's success. They didn't just see me as a wallet. They saw me as a sacrifice. I saved the document. I saved the notary log. I saved everything. Then I unlocked my phone. I had 18 new voicemails. I didn't listen to them. I sent one text to the group chat. Family meeting. Tonight. 7 p.m. At the estate. I'll bring the check. It was the only way to get them all in one room. They thought I was coming to apologize. They thought I was coming to pay the catering bill. They had no idea I was coming to deliver an indictment. I arrived at the estate at 6:55. The gates were open. The house was still decorated from the party the night before, though the balloons were deflated and the flowers were wilting. It felt fitting. I walked in with my briefcase. They were all in the living room. My mother was pacing. My father was pouring a drink. Sabrina was on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, looking bored. Marcus stood behind her, the dutiful fiancé. When I walked in, the air in the room shifted. It became heavy, suffocating. Well, my mother said, crossing her arms. It's about time. Do you have any idea how embarrassing today has been? The caterer called 3 times. I had to pay the band with my personal card. My father snapped. You owe me $5,000 just for that. Sabrina didn't even look up. You really are dramatic, Taylor. Just transfer the money so we can move on. They started in on me immediately, a chorus of gaslighting and entitlement. We did what we had to do for the family business, my father grumbled, referencing the mortgage money I had stopped. You have so much money. Why do you even care? Sabrina added. It's not like you have kids or a life to spend it on. I stood there, silent, letting them dig their own graves. I let them say it all. I let them confirm, with their own mouths, that they felt entitled to every cent I earned. When they finally paused for breath, expecting me to pull out my checkbook and beg for forgiveness, I walked to the coffee table. I didn't say a word. I opened my briefcase. I laid out the papers one by one, like a dealer laying out a winning hand. First, the forensic audit of the mortgage payments, highlighting the travel agency withdrawals. Embezzlement, I said, my voice calm level. My mother flinched. Then, the flight records proving I was in London on October 12th. Alibi, I said. My father frowned, confused. Then, the loan application with the forged signature. Identity theft, I said. Sabrina stopped scrolling. She looked at the paper, then at me, her face draining of color. Finally, I pulled out the copy of the notary log and the verification page with the stamp. I looked directly at Marcus. Fraud. Forgery. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud. I dropped the page onto the table. The room went deathly silent. The only sound was the ice settling in my father's glass. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. You can't prove that, Sabrina whispered, her voice trembling. I don't have to prove it to you, I said. I've already filed the police report. The FBI investigates wire fraud over $100,000. They'll be the ones proving it. My mother let out a strangled sound. Taylor, you wouldn't. We're your family. No, I said. Your accomplices. Family doesn't steal $250,000 from you. Family doesn't risk your career to fund a vanity project. I looked at them, really looked at them, and for the first time I didn't see parents. I saw the illusion of power. We often think abusive families are strong, monolithic forces that we can't escape. But in that moment, I realized their power was a rented costume, and I was the one paying the rental fee. My father's dignity was bought with my checks. Sabrina's success was funded by my credit. They were hollow. They were empty wallets pretending to be tycoons. And the moment I closed my wallet, their entire structure collapsed because it had no foundation. They weren't giants. They were parasites. And parasites die without a host. I closed my briefcase. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to inform you. The police have the files. The bank has been notified. And I am done. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, the screaming started. My mother begging, my father shouting threats, Sabrina sobbing. But I didn't stop. I walked out into the cold night air, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly free. The fallout was swift and brutal. The bank flagged the business loan as fraud immediately, because Sabrina had used the money to pay off other debts and fund a lifestyle she couldn't afford. There were no assets to seize. So the bank went after the collateral, my parents' estate. The foreclosure notice was posted 2 weeks later. They were forced to move into a small 2-bedroom rental across town. Their social status, the thing they valued above all else, was obliterated. The rumors in Cherry Creek were vicious, and for once, they were true. Sabrina's engagement imploded before the month was out. Marcus was fired from his firm and is currently facing charges that will likely result in prison time. He turned on Sabrina instantly to try and cut a plea deal. My sister, the golden child, is now facing her own legal battles, public humiliation, and a mountain of debt she can never repay. They tried to call me, of course. They tried to send letters. They tried to send friends to plead their case. I never responded. Not once. I watched their collapse from a distance, not with joy, but with a quiet, clinical satisfaction. It was the natural consequence of their own arithmetic. They had subtracted me from the equation, thinking I was a zero. They forgot that I was the one holding the pen. Months later, I sat in my condo, watching the snow fall over the city lights. It was quiet. My phone didn't buzz with demands. My email wasn't full of guilt trips. I had been promoted at work. Turns out, when you aren't carrying the dead weight of 3 adults, you have a lot more energy for your career. I sipped my tea and reflected on the title I now held in their stories. To them, I was the villain. I was the cold-hearted daughter who put her own sister in legal jeopardy. I was the monster who let her parents lose their home. And you know what? I accepted it. I embraced it. This is the piece of the villain. Sometimes, the only way to be the hero of your own life is to be the villain in theirs. Society tells us to forgive, to mend, to keep the peace at all costs. But peace isn't something you find, it's something you forge. Sometimes you have to burn a bridge to stop the enemy from crossing. If saving myself makes me the bad guy in their narrative, then I will wear that title like a crown. Because being the villain allowed me to save my financial future, my sanity, and my self-respect. As I watched the snow blanket the city, covering the scars of the year, I knew I had made the right choice.